This is Abnormal Entertainment.
Hey everybody, thank you for listening. This is Daniel Garza. Welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I want to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help. Thank you, sir. And inviting you to check us out at abnormalentertainment.com, where you can find all of the shows on the network. Go check it out. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube with my handle at Lil Mexican, LILMESICAN. Check that out, and you can find information on my guests. You can find videos, you can find photos, random stuff that I think is interesting. And if you want to be a guest on the show, you can send me a message on any of those sites. Today I'm kind of excited. I have Pastor John Waterson.
Yep.
Waterson. Funny enough, when I was trying to text you, I kept saying Waterman to my Google, and it was like, I can't find it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't find it? But it's Waterson.
Waterson.
And you are pastor over at Shepard's on the Hills.
Shepherd of the Hills.
Shepherd of the Hills.
In Rancho Santa Margarita.
How are you doing, sir?
I am doing very well. How are you doing?
Good. And I have to apologize to you on the air because I made you wait. First, I delayed the meeting 30 minutes because I was up in L.A., and then I got stuck in traffic, and you waited another 15 minutes. So thank you for being so patient.
That's all right. It's important stuff, getting headshots done. So
Is being patient part of being a pastor?
Well, trying to be patient is part of being a pastor. Sometimes I'm more successful at it than others.
Well, I totally appreciate you sticking around.
But when I'm sitting on a corner in Laguna Beach, it's
pretty cool.
It's pretty easy to be patient. You know?
Not bad, yeah.
So.
Well, let's get started with the conversation. Tell us, Pastor, how you put it together.
You know, when I went before the Board of Ordained Ministry, which is in the Methodist Church, the group that tells us whether we can be a minister or not, and they asked me, you know, to describe my story, I quoted Jerry Garcia. You know, what a long, strange trip it's been.
Wow.
Because I am a three-time loser in the sense that I started and stopped seminary twice before I finally went the third time and it stuck, and have done a million other jobs, you know, in between. So for me, it's been very much a process, you know, very much a process about figuring out, first of all, who God is, and is God somebody that I could worship, and then figuring out what I'm supposed to do in this world and how I'm supposed to serve. You know, I grew up. My dad was the United Methodist minister. My mom was a teacher, and then a teacher in the church. And both my parents were wonderful people, and so I grew up with good role models. And I think that sometimes I sort of thought, okay, I'm not that, so maybe I shouldn't do this at all. And so it was really a matter for me of coming to the place, finally, of saying, no, this is a life I feel called to lead, and I'm just going to do it as me. You know, I'm not going to try and be my dad, my mom, or anybody else. I'm just going to do it as me. And
so was it difficult growing up with a parent that was so involved in the church?
Yeah, it was. It was, I mean, like anything, it was difficult, but it was also kind of cool, you know. It was difficult in the sense that my dad was away a lot, because I grew up, you know, in the 60s, and back then pastors were, you know, that was your job, and your wife stayed home and took care of whatever family was there, you know. So my dad was gone a lot. My mom had 4 very crazy kids to deal with, of which I'm the third. And, you know, so that part was tough. It was very difficult, growing up, because when I was a kid, there were expectations. If you're the pastor's son, you know, and it was a small town in Ohio, you know, so if you're the pastor's son, there's certain kinds of behavior that's expected. And I was never, ever good at that. I was just never good at that. And always sort of fought against that a little bit, you know. And then when we came out to California, my dad was at a church in Irvine first. And I started there, I guess, about 5th or 6th grade. And these people were just like, whatever. You could be the preacher's kid or not. You know, you're just a kid.
Right.
Just do what you got to do. And I really, it was really the first time I felt that I had the freedom to go, okay, yeah, all right, this is, and I could be a little rebellious, and nobody said, oh, he's a terrible person, or.
Well, I have to say that most of the children that I knew who had parents in the church were not good kids.
No.
I mean, not that they were horrible.
No.
But I would look at them, because I was raised Catholic, and I would look at them and go, you're pretty rotten.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I wanted to hang out with.
Now, I will say this, and this is true about my siblings as well. I have a sister who's the oldest, and an older brother, and then a younger brother. And we all had different paths. But my older sister, my younger brother, and myself, we all misbehaved a great deal.
Okay.
You know, so we were bad kids in that regard. However, I've met people in church that don't like anybody, you know, and we were never like that. It's like we would be friends with anybody that wanted to be friends with us. But if you were our friend, you're probably going to get in trouble at some point. Yeah. You're probably going to do something wrong. And nobody's going to believe that it was my idea because I'm the pastor's kid. So you're going to get in more trouble than I am.
I did take the blame for things growing up.
Yeah.
So you moved to California.
Yeah.
And, was your path from child to pastor, was that pretty direct growing up?
Oh, no. We moved to California when I was about 8 or 9, and I said my dad was a Methodist minister, but he actually joined the Navy in 1969, and that's what got us to California. So for about 8 years, I was a Navy brat. You know, he was a chaplain, so he was still a minister, but he's a minister in the Navy. So I was a minister's kid and a Navy brat. So I was, you know, rebellion squared. You know, I was just rebellion on steroids. But the one thing, and I gotta say that for my family, what I'm most thankful for from both of my parents is like the life we lived in Ohio in the 60s is not the life that they were living. You know, my dad died in 2008. My mom died just last December. You know, thank you. But they were dramatically different people. They grew a great deal during that time. So I grew up seeing that modeled. Okay. You know, and to me that's a wonderful thing. You know, like my mom was the most. She's the most liberal person I've ever met in my life. And in the 60s, she was this very polite, button-down minister's wife. And, you know, when she died in 2016, she was like this complete hippie, you know.
Wow.
Just, you know, and that's the course of her life, you know. She was dedicated the entire time, you know. The only thing that was really consistent in both of their lives was their faith. And so that, you know, to me, faith was always something that grew and evolved. It was never something like, okay, you figured this out here, and that's it for the rest of your life. It was always this, you know, this thing that grew and evolved. So to answer your question, you know, to be honest with you, it's a journey that I'm still on. You know, I mean, I started seminary after college the first time. I lasted a semester, said I can't do this. I cannot do this. Did some other stuff for a little while, came back to seminary about 1.5 years later, lasted about 2 years that time.
Okay.
Said I cannot do this. It's just, you know, there's just too many rules, and I wasn't ready to love sacrificially. And by that I mean to give up something of myself to love someone else. You know, it's like I wanted to do things my way, and if it made people mad, or I wasn't ready to let go of the chip on my shoulder, for lack of a better term.
Did you still have like envelopes to push?
Well,
lines to cross?
I don't know if I had lines to cross. It's just that the truth of the matter is, I just wanted to know that I could do it if I wanted to. And I went and had a regular life. I, worked in the insurance business for, 7 or 8 years and just did all kinds of stuff. And then finally, literally came to that point where you're on your knees going, I have everything I had a house, I had friends, I had a job, things you want, but this just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I belonged to a men's group at the time, and none of them were of any particular faith tradition. We had, a couple of gentlemen who were Jewish, a couple of men who were agnostic, a couple who were just sort of, whatever, and then maybe a Christian or two, but we were all over the spectrum, politically, theologically, and we were sitting in that room one day, and I was sharing some of this, and they basically said, everybody in this room knows what you're supposed to be doing with your life. It's just you won't say it. And I'm like, and I'd been out of seminary for about 8 or 9 years by that point. So I thought that was done. I thought that was behind me. I didn't think that was, and it was just sort of this process. After that day, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not gonna say I'll go back to seminary, but I'm not gonna say I won't. I'm gonna sit with this and,
So do you think there's a big difference between wanting to dedicate your life to God, whichever religion you may be in,
right, and
being ready to dedicate it?
That's a great question. Because I think, and first of all, I do want to say that in my understanding, I honor all paths to God. I'm a Christian. That's my path. But I have relationships with, like I said, atheists, agnostics, people who are Jewish, Muslim, whatever your path is, I honor that. Right. So that's the first thing I do want to, that's something that my mom and dad did teach me very well. But I think you're right that there's a desire, some people have a desire but not a readiness. And where I see that a lot, it's a great question, because where I see that is from my faith tradition in Christianity, I see people that want to do a whole bunch of stuff, but may or may not be ready. Right. So they don't know the cost. They don't know what it's going to require of them. I had a clergy friend who told me while I was in the ordination process, he said, you'd never know that you really want to be a pastor until you're betrayed by somebody that you love. And you still want to be a pastor. And I was like, well, why would you say that? I'm still in the process. Why would you say something like that? But his point is, it doesn't have to be betrayed by somebody, but his point is until you have really experienced what the cost of doing something is and still want to do it. That's, so for me, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's willingness and there's readiness. And the truth of the matter is, part of the readiness comes from doing something for a while. I've been around long enough, and eventually I was actually asked to be on the board of ordained ministry, so I was the guy interviewing people to see if they can be, so that was a very strange turn of events for me. But in my own life and in my time on that board, I saw people who were like, this person is so clearly called to this, and they are so clearly driven by something. I don't know that they're ready. But then, I don't know if they're going to get ready unless they do it. And so, so I've never thought about it in those terms until you just said that. But I wish I'd have had that. Wish I had this conversation about 15, 20 years ago. It would have made my journey a lot more, understandable to me. Because, but then again, I also think that, like for me, you talk about how, your first question, how do you put it all together? For me, part of putting it all together is taking the journey one day at a time, recognizing that if I'm not stepping into something that I'm not ready for, I'm probably not living.
But don't you think also that happens, because now I'm going to take it outside of the religious aspect, that happens to us in most any career choice or path you take, especially something that's hands-on. Like we were talking when I got here, I got back into acting.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're a good actor unless you do it, but unless you do it for a while, you don't know. So you kind of have to start at the bottom and kind of suck at it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But if you're passionate enough, you will stick with it, no matter how many people say no.
Absolutely.
No matter how many doors close in your face, until eventually your passion, I don't know, becomes desire, and desire becomes that one-way road.
Yeah.
And that's all you can think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, you said you have to suck at it first, but part of acting is the same as like being a pastor is you're finding your voice. You're finding what it is you want to bring to a character or something. I mean, I remember, cause I was in college before I switched schools. I was a drama major,
Oh, okay.
and we learn, different techniques, and it's interesting because I thought whenever I did a technique, it always seemed to take me out of myself, and then we started talking about, like the method, the Lee Strasberg and all that stuff, and kind of living a character, and I remember thinking that's kind of fun, because when I live a character, who I am kind of becomes part of it. Right. And I actually read Laurence Olivier's autobiography. He was always my favorite actor. I read his autobiography, and I forgot what it's called now. Something like "Forgive Me, Listener" or something like that, But one of the things he said is he always thought that, people accuse actors of doing it so they could escape real life. And what he used to say is, I think that I chose the stage as a safe place to walk into my pain.
Yeah.
Totally. And to me, when you're finding your voice as an actor, what you're saying is, okay, I'm playing, this character, but where is Daniel in this character? Or what can I draw from, and then you wrap it around a character and you have the physical whatever, and I used to always love playing parts that required something physical because it made it easier for me to concentrate on the rest of it, I remember in high school we did a play called The Ballad of the Sad Cafe by Carson McCullers, and there's a character that's a hunchback dwarf in the play called Cousin Lyman. Well, I'm the shortest kid in the school, so I was the hunchback dwarf, and I tried to study and tried to do physicality and stuff that might be true to that, and then we put a thing in my shoulder, and it was really easy for me to kind of, and Cousin Lyman was kind of a jerk. He was kind of a manipulative little turd, and so to me that was fun, and I'm like going, well, that's not hard for me to find that in me, I got that all over the place, so I got to be all those things that I'm not supposed to be in the real world, I got to be him on stage and manipulate and and it was a blast. It was a blast. But so for me, it's finding that voice, and that, you're right, that doesn't just apply to ministry, or it doesn't even apply to a job. We were talking before we went on, you were telling me about, your boyfriend that you've known for you've been together with 5 years, right. It's like, well, love is the same way. When my wife and I met, and we were both older and had both been married once before, and when we met, it was sort of this, I'm not playing this game. Right. We're not going to do this dance where, if you like me and I like you, and we're going to be in this relationship, we're going to come clean about stuff. We're going to, and it was really funny because we went in not only with our hearts, but our eyes open. Right. And before we got engaged, we actually went and saw a therapist and did just sort of pre-engagement counseling
Oh, cool.
During which we almost broke up.
Oh.
Because I was being a doofus, you know. I mean, it was, that one was all totally on me, and but it was fun because in a safe environment, I got to see where, okay, John, this doesn't mean you don't get to be you.
Right.
This means you can be loving and still be you, and finding language to do that, finding ways to do that. And that's a part of everything, you know. I wasn't ready for her until I was. And part of getting ready for her was being with her for a while.
That's really interesting, the way you have put it all in perspective. Like just because you want it doesn't mean you can do it.
Right.
And I'm also glad that you mentioned that going to seminary, like, you had to do a couple of runs through it.
Oh, yeah.
To figure out, because I think it's important, especially for the younger generations now, who think that it's easy, who think that you go for the job and you're going to make it to the top right away.
Yeah.
Because I tell folks, Put It Together has been on the air for 5 years now, but I started in 2008 with other shows that didn't work.
Yeah.
And they were like 2-3 episodes in, I'm like, okay, this isn't working.
You know.
And you change the names over and over to finally Put It Together stuck. But have there been other challenges in your life? You talk about your marriage now, but have there been other times where you're like, okay, this isn't working, I'll come back to it, which is not quitting. And I want to make folks understand that. It's not quitting, it's just, I've got to take a step back and reassess the situation. Absolutely.
There have been many times, you know. I mean, there have been times in personal life and in ministry where I've had to say, this is not going the way I thought it should. And, you know, let me step back and look at what it is and invite some other eyes in here. You know, to me, that's the biggest thing that anybody can do. And I love the title, Put It Together, you know. But when you think about how does someone put it together, no one that I know has ever put it together in their life alone. You know, it always requires, you know, love and support of others, obviously, but also honest feedback from others, you know.
Right.
And it's like someone who's willing to say to you, I love you, but I don't think that's working. I don't think that's where this is supposed to be going. And I can say, no, I think it is. Or I could say, you're right, it's not. Thank you. You know? But if I'm willing to listen, that's, to me, and I really don't know, because it could be a cruel world. I mean, it really can.
Right.
And I know that in different industries, I mean, in acting, you know, oh my Lord, what a brutal industry. I don't know how vulnerable you want to make yourself. But to me, one of the best things that I could do in ministry, and quite honestly wasn't ready to do it those first few times in seminary, is to say, I don't have the answers, or I don't have all the answers. And if you have something to share with me, the promise I can make you is that I will listen. I'm not promising I'll do what you want, but I will listen to your feedback with an open mind and an open heart, because, you know, I want to be good at whatever I do. I want to be a good, you know, dad. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good, you know, brother, and, you know, to my siblings. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good minister. I want to be good at whatever. And you know, growing up, that's one thing about my family growing up is, you know, we were very, very competitive. And so, you know, that's ingrained is, you know, my dad, leave it all on the field. That was always the saying,
right.
Leave it all on the field. And I really want to leave it all on the field. But what I've come to realize, like as a pastor, is there's a lot I miss if I don't ask people's input.
So let me ask you this. Why do you think that when we're in that vulnerable position, when we're asking for constructive criticism, for validation, for whatever, for something as simple as do these shoes look good on me? Let's put it that way.
Right.
Why do we hear it doesn't look good, but we don't hear the I say this with love?
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, yeah. That's another good question. You know, that's interesting. Okay, this will go back to your willing versus ready thing, you know. I think a lot of us are willing to hear, but we may not be ready to hear, you know. And one thing that I taught some members of my church when we were going through a rather contentious issue, I said, don't ever ask a question that you don't want the answer to. You know, because if you ask and somebody gives you an answer you don't want, now you have to deal with that.
Right.
You know? And so for me, I think a lot of us are willing to hear on some level. We really are. We're not lying to ourselves. We really are honest. But we didn't know how not ready we were.
Right.
That's not grammatical, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's like we weren't really as ready as we thought we were. Because we hear, you know, I love you and you have a great fashion sense, you this. I don't think those shoes work.
Right.
You know, we hear you are a loser, you know, and that's what we hear.
Yeah.
That's what we hear. And we all do it. And we all do it, you know. So for example, my wife Cindy is, and I don't know if members of my congregation will hear this, so if they do, I want them to know that I value their input, but I know that I can ask Cindy what she thought of a sermon, and I'll get honest input, you know. She'll say, you know, that was great, or that wasn't one of your best, you know. And when I ask her, it's usually because I wasn't sure, and I knew that I was trying to do something, and I wasn't sure if I succeeded or not. But I know that I'm, you know, part of that being unsure could just be that I was afraid and insecure. You know, it could have gone well, and I just wasn't able to see it.
Right.
So she gives me clarity on that. But she'll also say, it wasn't your best. And then I can say to her, did I communicate this? And she'll say, no, I didn't get that. And it's like, okay, thank you, because then I know that my perception was right. Or sometimes she'll say, oh, I thought it was one of your best. That was wonderful. I got this and this, and I'm like, okay, so it came through, you know. But I know she's going to be honest with me, and she's always honest in love. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not like she says you suck at this, you know. but
she's going with tomatoes at the car.
Yeah, she's not, you know. It's like, honey, we're on the same insurance. Don't dent the car, you know.
But I get what you're saying, because I do public speaking often.
And you're very good at it.
Thank you. Oh, you were there.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to make note of that. I was like, I thought I sucked.
Oh, no.
I thought it was one of the most horrible speeches I've ever done. In fact, the recording, I haven't even seen the recording because I'm so like, I'm going to watch it. I'm just going to crucify myself.
I never watch my...
And, well, I was going to post it online, but I've been so scared of looking at it. I'm like, no, because I know, but we become very critical. And it's very easy to believe people who say, oh, you know, with this part was kind of odd. And right, I can go to that, I knew it.
And the whole thing was a failure.
I knew it, yeah.
Yep.
Because I said...
I sucked, yeah.
I said person instead of people.
Yeah.
The whole 10 minutes is a mess. And people are like, this is just one word, dude.
Yeah.
Like, let it go.
No, after your talk at the AIDS dinner, at our table, we were talking about that we still talking about it. So, I mean,
wow.
No, I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
The one time I've seen you speak publicly. So, but it was, but it's interesting because, again, that's a cause you've been involved in. That's a place you're passionate about. You talked about teaching young people about it and stuff like that. That's when you're in your voice.
Yeah. And
when you're in your voice, even if you think you're stinking, 9 times out of 10, we're probably going to be pretty good anyway, because we're speaking from our sweet spot. You know what I mean?
Oh.
And so it's so that's, I mean, so I, and I always try and tell people, who deal with public speaking, it's like the more connected you are to what you're saying, the more confident you're going to feel about it. Now, that's not to say there's not insecurity, because, we were talking about how critical we are. It's so funny because this past Sunday, I preached about Charlottesville. And I think that I hope that I was pretty firm in saying if the church cannot condemn racism, then we got to get out of the church business. I mean, if we can't condemn this, then, oh my Lord, we need to find another line of work. Jesus stands with the oppressed. I believe that with every fiber of my being. So that was a sermon I preached I felt good about it. I got good feedback from my wife, so I felt okay.
Right.
And so I said, and we have a guy that, that videotapes and puts it together, and we post it on our Vimeo page. And I said, because of the topic, when you have it, I want you to tell me so that I can post it on my Facebook page and say, because I think, because there's, what people think about Christians are what they see on TV. And, so Christians hate these people. They hate these, they hate black people. They hate gay people. They hate, and it's like, that's so not the faith. If you come to my church, you'd know that none of that's true, and so for me, as a Christian minister, it's like, if I make a statement like this, and I don't like posting these kinds of things, but this one I feel obligated to, because too many Christian ministers are too many of the famous ones. I have colleagues that are all preaching about this, but the famous ones are, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Maybe there was both sides. I mean, all, right. And I'm like going, you can't hem and haw on this. This is, and so I told him, when you have it finished up, let me know, and I'm going to post a link to it from my Facebook page, but I will not look at it. I know what I said.
Well, we'll look at it.
I know what I said, so I will not watch it, because if I ever watch myself, it's like, and again, I know this is in my head, but I think that has got to be the ugliest human being on the face of the earth. How my wife ever, how she ever looks at me. I mean, you look at yourself and you see every flaw, and it's like, oh my God, am I that bald? I didn't know I was that bald.
I laugh because I understand.
But see, that's what we do, And so it's like, I know in my heart that the sermon said what I wanted to say, and I got feedback that confirmed that. So I'm just going to post it, and I'm not going to look at it, because if I look at it, I won't post it.
Well, I hope you'll send it to us so we can.
I'll send you a link. Yeah.
Now that we got a little bit into, I don't want to get political on your episode, but
I don't mind getting political.
In the days that we're living, this 2017, which I'm sure is going to go down in history, there's been both a mixture of really exciting things and really not so awesome
crappy things.
Yes. What are we not hearing as Americans, as residents of this country?
That's good.
What are we not hearing that's dividing us?
Well, first of all, I think it's a great question, and I think there's kind of layers to it. It's like, what are we not hearing from our political leaders? What are we not hearing from our spiritual leaders? What are we not hearing, so we're not hearing from different places.
Let's say from the spiritual leaders, since that's your...
From our religious leaders, I think we're not hearing enough about love and inclusiveness and acceptance of all of God's people. And I don't like to use the word tolerance, only because tolerance implies I tolerate you. It's like, and I don't think Jesus tolerated anybody. I think he loved and accepted and embraced people. So that's language that to me is more fitting. I don't think that we hear enough of that, especially from leaders who have bigger pulpits. Every time Pat Robertson or Jerry Falwell Jr. speaks, I cringe. Because it's like, okay, I'm going to take what little voice I have in my corner of Orange County, and at least the people that I'm in contact with say they don't speak for, much of the Christian faith.
Right.
And they certainly don't speak for anybody that goes to my church or is a part of my, and I know that I have colleagues, sisters and brothers both who do the same thing, but we are all local church pastors. None of us has, a TV show. None of us has the media's ear, or and quite honestly, that's okay. I'm comfortable with that, But so we have to have 50, 100 voices to their one, because if Jerry Falwell Jr. says it, then people that don't have any connection with the church say, "You see, that's Christian. They're intolerant. They, they don't really think that much. They don't use their brains. They just, and so I say, no, we have a responsibility then to say, that's not the Christianity that I practice. That's not, I can't, he and I both call ourselves Christians, so I can't deny we're connected in that way. Right. I can't deny that. But we approach our faith dramatically differently.
Do you believe, or what's your belief? Is Christianity like art? It's in the eye of the beholder.
Wow, you ask really good questions.
Thank you.
I wouldn't say it that way, but it's interesting. I wouldn't say it that way, but I don't disagree with that statement. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's probably truth somewhere out there. And as a Christian, I believe Jesus was the perfect embodiment of that truth. But having said that, we are all trying to learn and interpret who Jesus was. So yeah, it's a part of it's in the eyes of the beholder. And if you don't recognize that about yourself, that's where faith becomes dangerous. Yeah. If I say, no, what I believe is what is, well, then I'm going to justify all kinds of things in the name of my faith. And sadly, for 2,000 years, Christianity has done that. We've oppressed many groups because we've said we have the truth. And for me, what I would say is the truth of Christianity is not a theological truth. It's an existential one, an experiential one. By that I mean God is love. Jesus is the embodiment of that love. I am called to live in that love. Those are truths that I will, I'm not going to kill for, but I'll die for. Right. Those are truths that I'll defend. Of course, if that's your truth, then you have to defend it in a way that is loving, not in a way that you're beating people over the head. But I will preach that and teach that. That's the truth. That's the part that I think is beyond the eyes of the beholder.
Because I was raised Catholic. One of the beautiful things about my parents and religion was that we lived in a neighborhood that had all kinds. There were Christians, there were Catholics, there were Mormons, there were Baptists.
Yeah.
And my sister being 9 years older than me, I was pretty much an only kid.
Yeah.
So my parents were like, we don't care where you go to church, just go somewhere. Like, you don't have to go with us, but go somewhere and get God in your life. One of the beautiful things was that I learned from different religions and saw how each one of them accepted God. And in the end, I was like, well, we're all after the same thing.
We are all after the same thing. And to me, that thing, that's the truth.
Right.
So if you say, what is your truth? And I say God is love and Jesus is the embodiment of that, But then if you say, okay, put that into a creed, I'd say, once I put it into a creed, it's no longer my truth.
Got it.
Because if it, so truth has to be beyond my creed. And this is where I struggle with a lot of organized religion, and not just Christianity, but it's like we say, no, I believe in God and I believe all these things, but it fits in this box. It's like, well, you know what? That's great, but what about the off chance that God doesn't fit into your box?
Well, you just said exactly what I was thinking. And I'm not going to proclaim to know the Bible. There's certain things that I know, and I don't think I've actually read it all the way through. One thing that I do know for sure is that at none of the places that I ever went to did they say God or Jesus loves you, but here is a form that you must fill, and you have to have 9 out of 10 correct, or we won't accept. I don't think God had, or Jesus, when he walked the earth, had an acceptance application for folks.
Actually, it was the opposite. He accepted people where they were at as they were at, and that the only people got bothered by it were the religious people.
Right.
But Jesus was like, no, I accept, I preached this Sunday on a thing from John's Gospel where this woman caught in adultery, and the people say, the law says we should stone her, and Jesus says, okay, the one of you who is without sin cast the first stone.
That's always one of my favorite.
And I use that one to kind of tie into Charlottesville, and the point of it is, it's like religion to me, or the Christian religion, I'll say, because that's the one I practice, was never supposed to be about us being the morality police. It was supposed to be about us pointing to God's love that we've come to know through Jesus. And it's a life. It's a way of living. It's a way of being in the world. It's not a way of. It's not a creed. Again, it's not a creed. A creed doesn't have that much power. A creed isn't that inspiring to me. But when I see Jesus, or when I read about Jesus, and I, think about the people he loved and the price he paid, it's like, that's inspiring to me.
Right.
I can follow that. But if you say you follow that, but then I wanted to add this little box around it that says you have to hate these people, you have to do this, and it's like, well, no. Now that doesn't mean, and I want to be clear because I know that people, think whenever I talk like that, that means any kind of behavior is okay. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. But what I'm trying to say is, it's not my place to say, okay, you're out, you're in, you're out. We're all on this journey, and we're all, putting it together as best we can, failing sometimes, succeeding in other times. But one of the things I believe about God's grace is it goes with me all the time. But if it goes with me, it goes with you too. And it goes with, and so you lead with that.
Because I think that even Jesus, until the end, was being crucified, and isn't there a part where he asked God, like, why are they...
He said, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's still the way of, like, I'm trying to put it together. Like, Jesus was trying to figure it out, like,
oh, yeah.
I have to forgive them, but I don't know why they're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah. And then, then the night before, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was praying, can you take this away from me, Lord? Can we do this another way? Is there any way around this? And he said, but then he ends the prayer with, your will, not mine, And to me, it's, again, in this day and age, a lot of people don't believe in God. And what I say, because when they talk to me, because when you're a pastor, people often tell you, what's wrong with the church, why they don't believe in God, or sometimes they tell me what's wrong with my church. Like, oh, I know you Methodists, you don't believe these things, you don't believe the right things. It's like, no, we don't. But when people tell me about why they don't believe in God, and they describe, one of the things that I heard a pastor friend tell me, and I agree, I said, what's funny is I don't believe in the God you don't believe in either. I don't believe in the God that hates people. I don't believe in the God that, I don't believe in the God that, so we're both atheists in that regard. I said, but I do believe in this God over here, and I think that's part of it is for people is like realizing, because the church has done such a horrible job of saying, what love is, what Jesus is, that you do have to believe not in the God that we think was really there, but this God that we've created in our image.
Right.
And the writer Anne Lamott said, it's a good bet, and I'm going to paraphrase because I can't get the quote right, but she said, it's a good bet you've created God in your own image when sure enough he hates all the same people you do. And that's,
That makes sense.
So it's like, yeah.
I was raised, and I always have this argument with other Catholics, and mind you, again, I'm for those of you listening, I don't go to church often, but I still was raised, and I have the Catholic guilt. Completely. I will own up to it forever. But I love it because it keeps me, especially being clean and sober for so long, it keeps me on that on that path. Not out of fear, but out of respect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to respect God because in that I'm respecting myself. And that's,
12 steps are a great path to God.
I think it was awesome. But I was raised that God was good and God wanted the best for you, and He wasn't there waiting at the end to smack you upside the head because you thought something nasty. I'm like, if God was going to do that, He'd be smacking me all day long, every day.
Yeah.
But I do believe that you can be raised in the religion. Maybe you don't follow it, but you still have those thoughts in the back of your head.
I agree.
So another, to get your point of view, because I'm finding it very interesting. Spiritual versus religious, and can they coexist?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's sort of the language going on right now. I hear that a lot. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, and I get that, But to me, part of the importance of church, or like going to a meeting in AA,
right.
Is that, again, you don't get to craft all of this in your own image. So I don't mind people that are spiritual but not religious, because religious, when they say religious, they mean, churchy and this and that, But I think people need to belong to a community of some kind, because it's in a community where we're going to get honest feedback about whatever. I know people, in the program, I have friends that are on the program who talk about, talking to somebody and then having somebody just completely call them on it and just say, yeah, they were just calling me on my bullshit. They just, and it's like, yeah, you need that. And if you're just doing this yourself, then pretty soon you're not going to have anybody, pretty soon you're going to have all the right answers, So to me, I tell people, if you don't find a church, okay, but find something where you're going and you are, the first 3 steps of AA, life is unmanageable.
Right.
There's a power greater than myself. And I'll turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understand God. The first 3 steps, you're saying, I can't handle it, and there's a power out there that can help me handle it. And to me, that's what the religious part is supposed to do. Now, sadly, it doesn't always do that. So when people say I'm spiritual but not religious, they're also saying I've not found religion to be very helpful in my life. And for them, I say, I'm sorry about that. All I can say is I'm sorry, but come visit us, because we're trying to do that, See, I couldn't live my life without the church, I couldn't do it, because I see what the church does in people's lives when it's working the way it should. And so I, when my mom died, I was really, when my dad died, he had brain cancer. So it was something you saw coming for a couple of years. Not that it was easy, but it was something we had time to prepare and grieve. My mom was very sudden. Nobody knew it was going to happen. And it's like, wow, I'm kind of out there, and my church and my friends from church, it's like, no, we got you right now. We got you. We understand. We got you. And it's like, I don't know how people go through these things, divorce or whatever, breakups or, without having that network of support that's grounded in something bigger.
Exactly.
And that's the difference. We all have a network of support in our lives. We all have friends or something like that. But are these things grounded in something bigger than us?
Because I went to rehab, so I was taught the first 3 steps and how important they were going to be in my life.
Yeah. So
I have friends who don't believe in AA, but yet we get together and talk about sobriety. And I'm like, well, basically we're having a meeting. I'm like, I don't want to put this out there, but
yeah,
we're having a meeting. And then I have friends who are not religious but spiritual, and they get together to meditate and
well, what is that?
And manifest and just center themselves. I'm like, so basically you're getting together to put your thoughts out to the universe to answer what you're manifesting. I'm like, that's kind of what God does.
And they're doing it together.
Yeah.
Which,
so you have a church.
Yeah.
You get together for service. They're like, no. I'm like, well, yeah.
And that's where the issue becomes sort of a semantic issue. It's like, yes, you're right. You're not religious like I'm religious, but you're being religious. And I think that's a human impulse. And like I said, I think the church, rather than be defensive and say, well, that's just a bunch of malarkey and people need to, get to church, whatever. I think we need to take stock of that criticism and say, I'm spiritual, but not religious. Because what I think people are saying when they say it about the church is, I believe in God and I believe in a higher power, but what you all do doesn't seem to have much to do with it. You all seem to be involved in your own thing. Right. And like I said, the church, gotta say guilty on that, But I also say that these churches that I've been a part of in my life are seeking to do better. None of us accepts, the Inquisition. It's like, oh yeah, that was a good thing. None of us says that, It's like all the things the church has failed at, we try with God's help to improve. And sadly what people don't see is a lot of things that the church does well, and it's we had a little vigil at our church on Sunday night. It's just, there was no real agenda. It was sort of, we're going to get together, we're going to create a safe place where people can pray and grieve, what's going on in the world right now. Right. And we had about 40 people, and it was amazing, because I had people from the community that are sharing parts of their own story, and I was like, wow, well, that's heavy. Thank you for sharing that, and it's like, okay, that's what it was. It was a safe place to spend an hour and just not have to live so much in the tension that is all around us all the time. And it's like, okay, well that's the church being the church. And, some people may not have come even though they saw it on Facebook or whatever, because it's like, well, that's the church. I don't want to get into whatever they do. But I guarantee you there was no evangelizing or no proselytizing. I wasn't trying to convert anybody. It was just like, no, let's come in,
I'll say this for me, the reason that I stopped going to church, and over the years I would go back because I missed it, or I had friends that were very connected, and I was like, okay, I'll go. But I did get tired. I'm pretty thick-skinned, but at some point I was like, okay, how many times do you have to badger on the gay community? Well,
and that's where the church is just guilty. I mean, there's just no way around that. The church, and that's why I love my church. We have, married gay couples in my congregation, also single. But I mean, it's like, and it's not as if, we say, oh, look over, they're just a part of the community. And that's, and that's, so I say that, it's like, yeah, the church, again, and it's the famous voices that, get that. And if I don't want to drag anybody under the bus, but a lot of non-denominational churches, your evangelical churches, even if they're not famous, that tends to be the position. Homosexuality is a sin. We have to fight this. And that's a whole other podcast.
Let me just say it, folks. I'm going to put this out there. Next to old ladies, gay guys bring the best dishes to potlucks. So you're missing out on a lot if you're not.
And wear the best shoes.
Yes. So just to put that out there.
That's the sin there is on the part of the church, in my opinion.
So we're a little beyond the part where.
Oh, okay.
We're going to run over the hours.
Okay, that's all right.
Where we want to put out some words of wisdom out to the people listening, and the door is always open. Who you want to send it to and what you want to say. What words of wisdom do you have for folks listening?
That's you told me before we started that you were going to ask me that, and I should have been thinking more about it.
But then we wouldn't have had this.
I know, then we wouldn't have had this conversation. But the truth of the matter is, words of wisdom. The only thing that I can say is, well, two things. Love first and ask questions later, and you'll rarely be wrong. Lead with love and deal with the details later. And you'll rarely be wrong. That's the first thing. And I say that to people inside the church and people outside the church, to whomever. Lead with love. I really believe in my heart that's what Jesus did. The second thing I would say And that's the people, this is really the people who really do feel like they have been, like you said, put off by religion. Like religion has singled them out, I would say, first of all, I'm sorry. On behalf of Christianity, I apologize and I hope that you can accept that forgiveness. But I would say find a path, any path, but find a path where it involves community and where it involves God, and if it's meditation, if it's this, if it's that, but find that path. It's got to be bigger than you, and it's got to be a community. Because in my heart of hearts, I think that's what God wants for all of us. God wants us to have a community. And I just think that's, and if people want to come back to the church, Shepherd of the Hills and Rancho Santa Margarita, we'll welcome you. I promise you. I'm going on record. we would welcome you, but
there's a little knot in my throat. While I was going through cancer and when I was diagnosed, there's been several times in my lifetime that have been, and you heard part of the story yet.
Yeah.
There's been several times throughout my 46 years where I've been close to and sometimes I've seen that light, and for some reason the angels, God, have not opened the door for me. St. Peter was like, you got to go back. And then I don't know what, and my sisters have all said, like, God has some amazing plan for you. And when I pray, I go, God, don't you have an easier way to get me that message? Like, can you put a burning bush on my backyard?
Yeah.
But instead of trying to kill me all these times. But during the time that I was going through cancer, I never feared I was going to die. I always knew that I was going to come out on the other end somewhat okay. And even when there was complications, I knew that there was a logic to it. And it wasn't my place to question it. It was just my place to follow him. And I'll tell you this quick story. When I was diagnosed with AIDS in 2000, a couple of days before I went to this meeting, there was this big support group that was in Houston. I was going to the meeting, and I had a dream.
Was it an AA meeting?
No, it was a support group for people who were diagnosed.
Okay.
And I had a dream, and in my dream, I was talking to God. I didn't see him, but I knew it was him. And he said, I've come to bring you something. And I was like, okay. And I remember, and somehow in my dream, I was thinking, how did God get to me? Because I was a drug addict and alcoholic and not a good person at the time. And I wasn't doing good things at the time.
Right.
And he said, I brought you this gift, and it's AIDS. And I was like, well, why would you give me that? And he said, don't worry. At the end, when it's all over, I promise you, I will pay you for all this. I will have an amazing gift for you at the end of all this. You will get compensated. But for right now, you've got to take it, and it's going to be painful, and there will be lonely times, and there will be medications and doctors and experiences that you might not like. But he in my dream said, I have faith that you will do something good with this. So can I leave this with you? And I'd already been diagnosed for about a year. And in my dream I said, well, if it's you, God, AIDS sucks, but if it's you, I'll take it, and I'll do my best by you. Just lead the way. I shared this it just happened that I dreamt that like on Monday or Sunday. On Wednesday when the group was, I shared that. I was asked to not come back to the group because some people were offended that I would say that it was a gift from God. But in my world, it was.
Right.
And here I am, 17 years later, acting with my own podcast, talking about HIV and AIDS in front of other people. It's what connected us.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm thinking, he has, in his own way, given me a gift, a lot of gifts through it.
Now, I would say, and again, this is just like the theologian in me, I would say that God does not give us those things, but I would say that God can enter into those things and say, I can make this a gift. I'm not denying your dream or anything, but what I, the way I, because because people say like, well, why does God give children cancer? It's like, I don't believe God gives children cancer. I believe children get cancer and God will be present in the midst of that, And I think, when you're telling me about that, when you're telling me the story in my head, I'm going, how did they go at that meeting? How did they go at that meeting? Because, because they're going to be coming from their place of pain.
Right.
Well,
they didn't like it.
And it's like, don't you talk about this as a gift, But maybe some of those people are at a place now in their life. But see, that's where, we have compassion. It's like, okay, you don't want me coming back. I guess I won't come back. But, I go knowing I'm true to my path and I pray the best for you, And that's, I've had church people say the same thing to me. We'd like you to not come back. That's what I love about the Methodist Church. Actually, John Wesley, the man who founded the Methodist movement back in the 18th century, got kicked out of every decent church in England. If you read his journal, it's like, I went to this church. They asked me to never return. I went to this church. They asked me. He's always getting kicked out of churches because he's talking about love instead of whatever.
Right.
But he got kicked out of everything until he finally said, I'm going to start my own thing. Because nobody else will let me in. So that's sadly part of the journey,
And in my presentations, when I do HIV education, it's a fun, I tell my story, but as you've known me now, there's really always this wicked side of me that's like trying to find the killers. Like when people ask me, how was it having anal cancer? I'm like, well, it's a pain in the ass, but it's behind me now. So I'm just sitting on it for now.
Oh, jeez.
And they don't know whether they're supposed to laugh or if I'm kidding. And I'm like, it's a joke. It's a joke. I'm like, I have the most holiest ass in Orange County. So thank you, God. And still people are kind of like, what did he just say? But I think I love what you said because I think that's what it is. God has been very present with me even before cancer, even before AIDS.
Yeah.
He's always been part of my life and said, you're a rotten little kid, but I'm going to walk you in another direction.
Well, I think you said it right earlier when you said, I was a good kid who did rotten things.
Yeah.
I like I said, I think there are rotten kids and rotten adults, people who don't care about anybody else, who like being mean, I think those are rotten people. Like myself and my siblings, we were never that kind of person, but we did a lot of bad things or against the rules kind of things. But we would love anybody that came into our orbit, this sort of the thing. So
I think we for everybody listening, we're all, my boyfriend Christian gets mad sometimes. He's like, you think everybody's good? I'm like, everybody genuinely is good. It's just, you have a different perspective on life, and you do things that you think are good that somebody else might perceive as bad.
Yeah.
I said, but for the most part, I think people are good, and we just want to survive. We're still trying to put it together. We're trying to make it to the end.
Yeah.
And, I was in my 20s. I was trying to survive life. I was living out of my car.
Yeah.
I did things that I wouldn't necessarily brag about, but I did them in order to survive, in order to have a shower in the morning, somewhere to eat. And would I recommend somebody else do that? No. Did it teach me a valuable lesson? It did. And I can look back on it now and go, I can survive anything. Anything.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And God has always been there for me. And not only is He there, but He's brought spiritual friends into my life who have taught me to meditate, who have taught me to sit back and just let go of my control issues and let the universe arrange things for me.
Let go and let God.
And and all that. And I always say, God has a plan, and the universe lays the road. And I just go.
That's good.
And I just go.
That's good.
I'm like, I don't question. I stop questioning it. Not to say that I'm not stubborn, but
we're all stubborn.
I'll sit there for a minute and go, are y'all? It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Like, are you sure?
Is this what you want? Mm. Okay, I'm 55, so I'm about 9 years older than you. So I don't know if you remember a TV show some years back called Joan of Arcadia.
Yes, love that show.
What I loved about the show was God never came in unexpected ways, and never asked her to do something that made sense until like the end of the hour when they wrapped it up in a nice little bow. But it was like, that's kind of what life is like a lot of times. It's like, why do you want me to do that? Of all the people, Well, that's how it goes.
All right, so we just went a little bit over.
That's all right.
So tell the folks where they can find you again. How can they get a hold of you?
Shepard of the Hills, United Methodist Church in Rancho Santa Margarita. Our website is sothumc.org. You can find everything, all the contact information, everything on there. And we're also on Facebook, Shepard of the Hills in Santa Margarita, and we also have a site in Mission Viejo. One of my friends is the pastor there, so all my information is there, and you can contact me. I love having these kinds of conversations. So
well, I want you back on this.
I was going to say, I love doing it. This was kind of fun, actually, and there's a lot more ways it could go. So
yeah, we've only
we'll do this again.
Anything special coming up for the rest of the year with you guys?
Well, school's starting, so we're starting into our fall programming, and we're doing some good studies. There is one thing that we're starting in September. On September 20th, I think, is our first time. It's called Breaking Bread, and we meet in a restaurant, and we have a theology kind of discussion, and then so we eat, we drink, and we study together.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's the first one is on the 20th of September. It's not on the website yet, but it'll be up in about a week or so. So the details. So that's something that I'm leading, and I'm kind of excited about it because it's theology. It's not it's not a sermon. It's not like a self-help. It's like, let's take this topic and just go for it and go into and hopefully it'll be new. The way I approach it is, if in my preparation, if I learn something new, then everybody will probably learn something new.
One of the last things that I wanted you to comment on, somebody listening out there who was part of any church and maybe went away to find themselves somewhere along the way, and they want to come back, and maybe they're a little hesitant or a little scared, or resentful, whatever, whatever word you want to put in there.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I would tell them Shepard of the Hills is a safe place. Our sanctuary is full of those people, to be honest with you. A lot of people have a story about, growing up in a church that they didn't feel at home in, we kind of specialize in it, to be honest with you. And I would tell those people that there's a place, what I want them to know is there's a place for them somewhere. It could be with us, it could be somewhere else. But there's a place for them somewhere. Keep looking for that community.
Awesome.
Because we all need that.
Cool.
We all need that.
And I remember we talked briefly about it at dinner. If you ever want me to come and share my story on how I put it together.
We'll work that out.
I'm more than happy to come out there.
We'll work that out.
All right. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
It was awesome. Thank you for waiting for me. But on my end, I'm so glad that you were patient enough to wait.
Not a problem. Well worth it.
For those of you listening, it's been Pastor John. I keep saying
Waterson.
But I keep saying the name of the church incorrectly.
Shepard of the Hills.
Shepherd of the Hills.
Of the Hills.
I want to say Shepherd on the Hills.
Shepherd of the Hills.
Of the Hills. All the information will be on the Facebook page for you to go check it out, along with info and anything you want to do, anything you want to look them up or come by and say hi. Or if you want to have a conversation like this with him, I'm sure he'll make time for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you again from our producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help. Thank you, sir. Go by and visit us on abnormalentertainment.com. Check out all of the shows on the network. You can also check and look up the shows on archives. Go and check this out. If you want to find more of me, go to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. My handle is at Little Mexican, LILMESICAN. Or you can email me at DanielGGarza@hotmail.com, DanielGarza ggarza@hotmail.com, and put podcast on the subject. If you want to be a guest on the show, or if you want to nominate somebody, just send them in. Send me a message on any one of those, and just put podcast, and I'll know what you're talking about. For now, I want to thank Pastor John for being here with me. Thank you all for listening, and this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true, where all God's children dare to seek to dream God's reign anew. Here the cross shall stand as witness and as a symbol of God's grace. Here is one we claim the faith of Jesus. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word. Built of tears and cries and laughter, prayers of faith and songs of grace. Let this house proclaim from floor to rafter, all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.